Over in the pages of DC Comics, the publisher is finally resuming some normal publishing of ongoing series after the conclusion of the recent Night Terror series. Shazam is only 3 issues old, counting this week's installment, and in some of the previous titles of the series, we've seen the gods who have bestowed some of their powers over to Shazam, now known as the Captain, start to become a little bit frustrated with some of his activities. We've also seen some of Billy's accomplices like Freddy get caught up in the mix, and as a result, some of the powers for the Shazamly are no longer working. My name is Arako Braddock, and today, let's go ahead and dive into the 3rd issue of this Shazam comic book to see if our team of heroes are able to get their powers restored in full. Before we get deeper into the video, I want to encourage you to consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that like button over on our content. To Africa and beyond, the gullible spirit of Atlas is guiding the captain into a battle between Garguax, the Emperor of the Moon, and a band of superintelligent apes who have been separated from Gorilla City in a mass Grexit. With the Earth at stake, will Billy Batson find some way to end a war that he started himself? Shazam issue 3 is written over from Mark Waid and features art over from Dan Mora. We have colors from Alejandro Sanchez, a cover over from Dan Mora as well, and we also have letters in the series coming in from Troy Peteri. Really like how this cover shows off the scenario that takes place a little later into the comic book over with Gorilla City. And I want to extend a big thank you over to League of Comic Geeks for posting some covers over on Shazam issue 3. Now, really appreciate how this issue starts off with a focus over on Freddie Freeman. This ongoing plot thread with Freddy angering some of the gods based on a conversation that he heard over at the Rock of Eternity was a really fascinating way to be introduced to some of these pages. Really thought that across some of these elements as well, that artist Dan Mora did a fantastic job illustrating some of the dynamic between the gods as well as their anger at the character of Freddie Freeman. Later on in the title, when we switch pace and get caught up with Billy and Freddy looking over their online presence, I really thought that Mora did a fantastic job illustrating what his version of a YouTube page would look like over with the character of Metamorpho. Plus, the way that Dan Mora kind of cuts this page in half and shows Billy and Freddy toiling over some of the comments of this storyline was also really intriguing to witness over in the title. These plainclothes sequences that Mora is able to illustrate for these characters really come alive across this issue. And I think that some of the apparel that he lends over to characters like Freddy, who is utilizing a scarf in some panels, makes him look really diverse and interesting as a character. Also think that some of the hair that Mora is able to capture from the shading looks quite beautiful across some of these pages too. When we get the interactions between the family and Billy, the intrigue behind some of the powers not working is really established as well. Thought Eugene had some really strong lines in the issue to comment on the situation over with the Shazam family. Also, really found it cathartic that Billy went ahead and interacted with some of these other characters and helped save the day. It was really interesting to see how some of the animals are utilized over in the Shazam comic book. And I love how writer Mark Waid has really been using some of the previous elements of Shazam and introducing some new ones over in this comic book. Plus, there's just a fantastic scene over with Taki Tani and Darla that I think captures both elements of their characters incredibly well. Also, some of the visual sequences and shading over on Taki Tani's fur, as well as the expressions that Mora is able to render with the dinosaurs, I think make this book really look intriguing and give it so much nuance. Also, I really appreciate how in this issue, Mark Waid is dedicated at fleshing out some of the interpersonal nature of the gods characters as they really try and track down Billy Batson in the comic and sort of make his powers go haywire. When we get the sequence that this cover references, showing Billy trying to help out the gorillas over in Gorilla City sent to the dark side of the moon, I thought it was really, really intriguing for Billy to get set up in that way in this comic book issue. I frankly don't fault Billy at all. He is a younger character, and watching him get caught up in that scenario, I think really meshes nicely with him as an individual. Another aspect about this issue that I also really enjoyed is the fact that Mary Marvel was referenced directly in continuity here. I was actually really hoping to see this because in the Night Terror Shazam comic book, we saw Mary featured prominently over in that series. And I think it would just be so weird in terms of the continuity of this title if nothing was brought up about that ever again. I don't think it would have been as cohesive if you were coming from Night Terrors over to this chapter, being that this is the third issue of Shazam as well. Finally, seeing some of the last pages in the issue and watching Billy really get caught up in some of the schemes of the gods, I think was pretty intriguing here. It feels like Billy has been set up for the last couple issues, so at some point he has to find out that he's being hoodwinked here. So at the end of the day, I thought Shazam 3 was a really fun issue that did a great job fleshing out the conflict between Billy and the gods. I think it's really intriguing that at this point, Billy still doesn't have any inclination as to what's going on and, who is kind of pulling the strings behind some of these elements. Also found it really interesting that Mark Waid has introduced so many animal characters into the book. I'm actually also impressed at how many plot threads Mark Waid has been building for this ongoing Shazam book, and I hope he continues to utilize all these elements as well as the greater Shazam family, like Darla in particular, who always, I think, stood out so prominently in the Shazam films. I want to know from you, are you enjoying this issue as much as I did? What are some of your thoughts on this book introduced back into continuity after Night Terrors? Let me know over in the comments below. Thank you so much for coming to check out our review of Shazam issue 3, and we'll be back to cover future issues of the series and to see the endpoint over with Billy's battle with the gods. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.